I realized in my last video I didn't really go over detail about my Evo. This is a 2003 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution, and this is actually a car that's got 245,000 miles, and this is all the original paint. It does have issues. As you can see down here, it looks like at some point the lower lip kind of fell off, or it looks like it kind of scraped the ground. Things like the headlights, they're kind of yellowed and kind of faded. I don't know if it'll show up on video here, but if you look at the hood, certain angles you can kind of see there's several little dings on here. That's actually from hail damage when the car was in Virginia. Stuff like the mirrors, they're pretty faded. This trim here, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just replace this. I've seen some people try to refinish these. Sometimes it looks good, sometimes it kind of looks like crap. Things like the brake calipers, you know, my car's got the typical faded Brembos. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually refinish those. Spoiler has the typical carbon fiber clear coat peeling and stuff. So what I think I'm going to do at some point is I'm going to try to sand off the remaining clear coat, and then I think what I'm going to try to do is just use 2K and try to recoat it. The exhaust, I don't know what kind of exhaust this is. I don't know, not sure what that is, but I think at some point I'm probably going to replace the exhaust too. On this side, doesn't look bad. There was a couple stone chips, but also, if you can see, there's a couple, you know, scratches across here too. Same thing on the mirror and stuff here. Since the last video, I have updated a couple things on the engine bay. I got rid of the stock intercooler piping. I just went with this DC Sports intake, intercooler piping and intake. On my original Evo, I had, you know, this turbo excess blow-off valve. It's a recirculating one, so I was able to find another one of those, mounted that in there. This panel here on the original motor that came with this car, it looked like someone painted it and it looked horrible. So I was going to sand it down and try to fix it, but just got to the point where I just ended up finding one on eBay for cheap. It's got coilovers. I think these are Megan Racing coilovers. Personally, not something I really enjoy, but as far as the interior goes, interior isn't too bad. Since I bought the car, I replaced the floor mats. I vacuumed the crap out of the car. Seats, I think at some point what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this driver's seat because it's looking a little rough. Interior overall though is not bad. This ashtray is pretty scraped up. What I think I'm going to do is actually this whole panel on the center console, I think I'm going to just pull it out and repaint the entire thing. I was going to replace just the ashtray, but it seems like this is such a common issue where they tend to be scraped up from where it hits when you open. For the heat and air controls, you know, there's a couple areas where it's kind of pretty worn, so at some point I think I'm going to fix that up too. Now, for anyone who hasn't watched the previous video, I actually owned one of these cars when they were brand new back in 2003, and one of the things that I did on my car is I actually painted this whole panel in this side here in the same color blue as the exterior, with like a matte finish. And I actually was able to find the exact same paint that I had 20 years ago that I bought. And so I'm going to actually, I think I'm going to kind of do a replica of that car. I also have white face gauges, like the reverse Indiglo gauges, that at some point I'm going to also install on this car. It was kind of cool. I actually kept the original one that I had on my car. And as far as the boost gauge goes, on the, the previous owner, mounted this boost gauge here. In the past, on my original car, right around here, I had just one of those little dual gauge pod dashboard kits, and I had Autometer Pro Comp ultralight gauges. Unfortunately, the ones that I had were actually white, and now they only sell them in silver face. What I might do at some point is try to find some of the vintage white ones to match. But otherwise, I think I'm still going to use the silver ones for now. Silver's not that bad. It actually looks pretty decent. The pedals down here, these are just like the regular rubber pedals. On my original one, I had the sport pedals, which was like a dealer option. So basically, they're aluminum with, larger holes with like little plastic, white plastic inserts. I was actually able to find a set of those, so I actually have those ready to install. As you can see here, here's the mileage, 245,983. So now the motor that's in this car currently was replaced right after I bought the car. And the reason is, when I bought the car, I was driving it back and the timing belt snapped. I was on the phone with Mitsubishi getting quotes for timing belt service, and unfortunately I didn't even make it all the way back to my hotel at the time. So I ended up buying a replacement motor. I still have the original motor. My plan is to at some point have that motor rebuilt, and I want to put it back in this car. Also, in the past, right over here, I had a Apex turbo timer. I actually have one that I bought. Unfortunately, some of the wires are hacked up, so I ended up buying a second one. But once again, on my original Evo, I had some stuff done, and I kind of want to mimic that. The rest of the interior is actually in really good shape. I mean, especially for a car with, that kind of mileage. The headliner, unfortunately, is a little dirty. At some point, I guess the AC clutch wasn't working. So basically what happened is people were driving around with the windows down the entire time. Now, stuff like the back seat on this car, it's actually like almost perfect. Again, sorry about how dark it is here. I work kind of a lot of hours, so it's like this is the only time I get a chance to take video and pictures and stuff. But overall, this car's in really good shape for the mileage. Now, the cool part is this car has absolutely no rust, and that was kind of the main reason why I purchased this car, even with the mileage. Another thing I have on order too, on my original Evo, they were kind of like brushed aluminum sill plates, and it said like Lancer Evolution. Once again, those were available through the dealership, and I was actually able to find someone who, had a set that was never installed on a car, so I ordered those. They haven't come in yet. I think what I'm going to do is at some point when I get all the interior parts, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start tearing the center console out. I got a new shift boot and Momo shift knob. Basically, if you look at the original shift boot, it's all torn up. I have a replacement shift boot, so I think what I'm going to do is pull this panel out, repaint all this area, replace the shift boot, get rid of this HKS shift knob and put the Momo's shift knob on. Momo's shift knob kind of has this kind of style where it's got the little dimples and everything. So I actually had kind of a Momo knockoff on my original car, but once I realized that it was actually a knockoff of Momo, I figured, well, I'll just get the Momo one. Now this car, unfortunately, you know, when I turn on the interior lights, my hazard light buttons, or the hazard button light, is pretty dim. Or actually, it doesn't light up at all. These do not light up at all. I think it's, you know, I'm going to have to like go through and try to figure out all the bulbs that are burned out. For some reason on these cars, all the backlighting for the radio and these, along with the gauge cluster itself, always seem pretty weak. You know, obviously I'm going to remedy the gauge cluster with the reverse indigo gauges, but as far as these lights go, might have to just see if there's any better bulbs available. The radio itself, you know, unfortunately, I think this radio is kind of a little outdated. You know, I have a couple CDs still, but what I'm probably going to do is just try to find like an aftermarket single DIN radio, just something so, you know, maybe I can get HD radio or something a little, you know, a little better, so I get a couple more options. And it would be great to have a Bluetooth connection for my phone. I might replace all the factory speakers, just upgrade those so that I get a little better sound too. I think this stereo system, brand new, was like 140 watts. Wasn't really anything impressive at the time. But also, since the last time I took a video, this steering wheel, I actually replaced this one. There was a steering wheel on originally that looked like it was all baked, and it was swelled up and it was like really sticky. Couldn't even grab onto the steering wheel without it sticking to your hand. So luckily I was able to find a replacement one, and it wasn't terribly expensive. And I was able to kind of clean it up. So this one actually looks fairly, you know, fairly clean and in good shape. It doesn't really look all that worn or anything. Start it up really quick. Now, unfortunately, just like a lot of Evos, I'm having an issue where it doesn't want to rev correctly. It wants to, I've tried, I think I'm on my 4th idle control valve, and basically every time I switch it, it's either it's revving too high and it doesn't want to idle, or it gets like an idle surge, or it's practically stalling out. But I also have an issue with the starter, which the crazy part is it didn't do this when I originally bought the car. So I don't know if the shop that swapped the motor out put the original starter back in and maybe didn't put shims in, or what, but man, it sounds all right now, but basically it just kind of wants to stay around like 2,000 RPMs. I have no check engine light on right now, but I'm starting to suspect that the previous owner may have removed the bulb to eliminate that, so not really sure. But it sounds all right, just with the problem with it revving up really high. I've tried adjusting the idle, and I got another idle adjustment screw on its way. I don't know if that's leaking or what, but I mean, overall though, this car, you know, I got it for a fair price. I knew I would be putting a lot of money into it, but overall I think it's in pretty good shape for 245,000 miles. So anyways, what I want to do is, at some point, I want to kind of go through, and what I might do is at some point do the interior all in another video. And I'm still kind of continuing with trying to diagnose the idle issues. That might be a while, unfortunately. Yeah, this is another minor issue with the paint. I think I'm gonna just sand that all down and redo that. But again, these cars unfortunately are getting kind of hard to find with no accident history and no major title issues. And you know, even though I'm gonna do some little custom stuff to it, again, what I wanted to do is just kind of make it look a lot like the original car that I had back in 2003. So it's not going to be anything crazy. It's not going to be anything, you know, insanely powerful. I mean, if I can get it to about 350 at the wheels, I'd be pretty happy with that. But again, that's probably all going to happen with the original motor once I get it all put back together. Still kind of trying to figure out where I'm going to go to get the block refinished. One thing I do want to do at some point, before I had my Evo, my original Evo, I also had a 1995 Eagle and Talon TSI all-wheel drive. And at one point, I blew out the differential, and I brought my transmission to a place called TRE, Team Rip Engineering, in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And what I think I'm going to do is take this transmission at some point and bring it to them and see if they could rebuild it. They increase the oil passages, they replace all the synchros, they kind of do a lot of work to it. And you know, supposedly with, you know, there are some options that you could do in addition to the standard work, but you know, with all the additional work, you can put out over 1,000 horsepower and the car will have no problem, or the transmission will have no problem holding up to it. So anyways, like I said, I'm gonna, you know, continue to update the car and make videos when I can. Again, my work schedule kind of makes it a little difficult, and it is in the winter right now in Michigan, so definitely gotta wait till it warms up. So anyways, just look out for the next videos if you're interested, and follow me in the next step in this rebuild process.